Austin Mankey, president of Kit in Every Classroom, a nonprofit organization that places bleeding control kits in classrooms across America. Schools need better training for public access bleeding control kits. If we have these in schools, we need to have people who are qualified and know what they're doing to use these. So to help me show that today, I have Harvey Ballman, Marine Corps vet, current law enforcement officer. All right, Harvey, what's the first thing we're going to be doing before we even think about using these kits?
So anytime that you have an issue where you may have an injury or some kind of critical incident at your school or at your place of business or whatever, the first thing you need to do is ensure that the scene is safe, meaning there are no additional threats to you, and that could be from bad actors who are creating a bad situation. It could be from machinery, it could be from oncoming traffic, it could be from whatever. Basically, you need to ensure that you are safe and that everybody around you is safe, or as safe as we could be.
All right, so when we're thinking about TCCC, Tactical Combat Casualty Care, there's an acronym that goes with the order of operations that we need to use things, and that is MARCH. Massive hemorrhage, airway, respiration, circulation, then hypothermia or head injuries. Now, we're going to open up the kit and see what we have in here to start with MARCH. Okay, you'll see your instructions in the kit, a tourniquet, emergency trauma dressing, 2 chest seals, trauma shears, 2 packs of gauze, 2 pairs of gloves, and a Sharpie for writing on the tourniquet. Now, first, massive hemorrhage. What are we thinking about and what are we using when we think massive hemorrhage?
So anytime we think of massive hemorrhage, we need to think of life-threatening bleeding. All right. If you've got a serious arterial bleed or a significant amount of venous blood loss where the patient is bleeding uncontrollably, you need to control that first. So in that MARCH algorithm M, that massive hemorrhage, that's going to be one of your most important steps. You need to control that bleeding right now. So in this kit that Kit in Every Classroom provides, they've got the North American Rescue CAT tourniquet, and they've got this emergency trauma dressing as well as gauze. Number one thing for the extremities is going to be use of the tourniquet. There's been a lot of bad information over the years over the use of tourniquets and information indicating that you're going to have an amputation or some kind of additional problem from using a tourniquet. But if you're using a modern quality manufactured tourniquet from a company like North American Rescue, you are going to be able to effectively save somebody's life and occlude all blood flow in that extremity with little to no chance of ongoing problems after the fact, as long as they get to a doctor within a reasonable amount of time.
Good. Okay, let's see how to use this.
Okay, so first thing, you're going to notice that it is already pre-staged. It may come already wrapped up in a package when you receive your kit. Number one thing you need to do is get that package open and make sure that your tourniquet is properly staged. All right, so first thing you're going to do, if you're applying it to a buddy or somebody else, find the affected limb. If you've got time, typically you're going to want to go 2 to 4 inches above the wound, not on a joint, which means if Austin had a wound right here, I'm going to go 2 to 4 inches above it, but not on the actual joint itself, because if I apply a tourniquet to a joint, it's not actually going to occlude blood flow, and you're still going to have an active bleed. So let's say it's right here, and I have time, and I know there are no additional injuries above that wound. I'm simply going to apply it 2 to 4 inches above the wound. I'm going to grab that red tab end, pull it tight, tighten it up, wrap it all the way around, ensuring the Velcro, that self-adhering band on the tourniquet itself, goes all the way around. Grab my windlass, which is the mechanical device that actually tightens the tourniquet, and I'm going to turn it 2 to 3 turns until the bleeding stops, or until basically 2 to 3 turns typically if you get a nice tight pull, or until the bleeding stops. Okay, now let's say I don't have time, I've got an active threat or I've got an active problem and he's been bleeding for some time, and I don't have the ability to do an assessment to figure out where that wound actually stops. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go high and tight. Basically I'm going to go all the way up to the armpit, or on the leg all the way up to basically where the pelvis is, and I'm gonna go parallel to the ground. Very important, I don't go above the shoulder, because as he moves his shoulder around, that thing is gonna loosen up. So I'm gonna go all the way up, high and tight, parallel to the ground, get that initial pull nice and tight, wrap that self-adhering band all the way around until that windlass clip, which is the C-shaped clip on your tourniquet. From there, I'm gonna take my windlass and I'm gonna tighten it 2 to 3 turns, and I'm gonna do it for real on Austin, so you can see that it is not gonna actually hurt him or you if you ever have to use this. Okay, 2 to 3 turns until the bleeding has stopped. Doing good?
Yeah.
Okay. I secure it in that windlass clip. Very important next step. Take that self-adhering band, the tail of that self-adhering band, and feed it through your windlass clip. Okay, this ensures later that if this gets caught on something, it doesn't pop off and you lose your tourniquet and you restart that bleed. From there, I take my self-adhering, or on my rod securing strap and secure it. You'll notice on the rod securing strap it says time. In your kit, you've got a small Sharpie. Simply write the time and the date on that tourniquet. Another good option is to take the patient's forehead, put a big T on their forehead. All right, what does that do? That tells paramedics and doctors later that there is a tourniquet somewhere on his body. They will know what that T means. And typically we want to write time and date. In the United States, a date stamp isn't nearly as important as it would be if you're operating in a third world country or something like that, where you might have a delayed access to medical. Okay? So, if you'll know that the tourniquet is working by simply checking their pulse, okay? And if I can't find the pulse, guess what? It's working. If I feel a pulse, I don't have it tight enough. Another good way to tell is if Austin was to hold up both hands, you can see the difference in his capillary refill. Basically, if you squeeze his nail beds on either hand, you'll find that one hand does not refill, the other one does. Okay, I know that this tourniquet is working, it's doing good. Now, very important, if you apply a tourniquet to somebody, they're not gonna enjoy it. It's not gonna be comfortable, and they're gonna wanna take it off. Don't allow them to take it off. The only people who take this off are paramedics and above. All right, so basically once this thing has been applied, you don't remove it and you don't allow the person to remove it. It's gonna be very uncomfortable, and that's okay, it's keeping them alive. Very important other step, if you get a tourniquet, you don't practice with that tourniquet that you intend to use in real life. So my recommendation is your organization or you individually purchase multiple tourniquets, one training tourniquet and one training tourniquet, and however many real life tourniquets you intend to use in a actual situation.
So what would we say if we already used our tourniquet, or if we have a bleed that's not like an arterial bleed, it's a little less minor, what else could we use in here for an extremity bleed that is not as serious, or if we already used our tourniquet?
And I can open this?
Yes.
Okay, so another option is, let's say you've got a bleed that's not as serious, but it still needs to be controlled. Okay, we've got this ETD, emergency trauma dressing. All we're gonna do with that, open it up, okay, take it out of the packaging, and you'll find that it's basically an ACE wrap with some padding in it. Okay, what I can do is I can find the bleed itself, apply the actual bandage to the bleed, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it tight around, and you'll find that there is little pieces of Velcro that prevent this from unrolling. So I apply the pressure to the wound itself, wrap it around, come again, wrap it around, and I'm going to continue to wrap until that bleeding has stopped. Does that make sense?
Simple enough.
Okay. Now, if we have massive hemorrhage in a junctional area of the body, which means the shoulders, pelvis, portions of the neck excluding the throat, because we don't want to block an airway, we can utilize this compressed gauze. Okay, now this compressed gauze, in these, it is 4.5 yards of gauze packed into this little package. So, for that, I'm gonna
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna open this up, take it out. Okay, Okay, so typically you're going to find gauze it's rolled up one of two ways. If it's this compressed gauze, you're going to find that it's a nice little compressed rectangle, and it simply unfolds like this. Now, if it's in a roll, like what you would find at a typical box store or drug store, you can unroll it one of two ways. You can unroll it this way, like a tube of or a roll of toilet paper, or what you can do is you can grab that center, find that center piece directly in the center, and then you can unroll it, and it is a nice controlled, nothing's falling out of your hand. Either way, doesn't matter, okay? So this is going to be applied when we have either a very deep wound that's been already controlled by a tourniquet, or it's in a junctional area where you can't actually apply a tourniquet and have success. Things like the pelvic girdle and the shoulders, not going into the chest cavity, but up here in the meaty portions of the shoulders, okay? What you would do here is basically find the source of the bleed. With a gloved hand, you're gonna basically create a little notch, apply that into the actual source of the bleed, and you're gonna pack towards the heart, backfilling the entire wound channel. Basically come out, applying pressure with one finger, and we're going to Z-fold. So we're gonna basically create a Z shape and apply this on top, and then come out, and same thing, and we're just filling in that entire wound channel.
All right, now we're moving on to airway. So Harvey, what can we do for as far as an airway, to secure an airway for our patients so they can still breathe when we're working on them?
So we have a couple options for the airway. In this kit, you're not really provided with adjuncts to deal with airway issues, but the good news is everybody is capable of helping open and secure an airway through three simple methods. One is called the head tilt chin lift, two is the jaw thrust maneuver, and three is what's called the recovery position. Okay, so the head tilt chin lift, basically what that is if I do not suspect any kind of spinal injury, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the patient, I'm going to tip their head back, and I'm going to lift up their chin. What that does is it moves their tongue out of the way of their throat. Next is the jaw thrust maneuver. Now, jaw thrust is when I suspect that there may be spinal trauma and I don't want to be moving their head around. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up, and this is typically only going to work on an unconscious patient, but I'm going to come up from either side, the head or the body. I'm going to take my thumbs and I'm going to place them on the cheekbones. From there, I'm simply going to lift their jaw forward like this and give them kind of that barracuda looking jaw, okay? So I'm going to basically lift his jaw forward, all right? The goal is not to move his head at all. And basically what that's gonna do is gonna help open that airway and move that tongue out of the way. Now, if you can't do that, or you have multiple patients that you have to deal with, or you are no longer able to stay in that spot because you have to move on or whatever. Let's say you've got a patient on the ground. Last thing I want to do is allow them to lay on their back, because an unconscious person may lose control of their tongue. When their tongue falls back into their throat, blocks their airway, and then we've got a larger problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn them into the recovery position. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay them on their side with the arm and leg on the ground level, straight up and straight down, and then using their arm as a tripod, I'm going to basically lay their arm under their chin, and I'm going to create a tripod with the leg. But basically I'm going to turn them on their side to ensure that if they have anything that was blocking their airway, it is unable to block it due to the basically gravity's helping us out.
So next in March is respiration. What can we do to help our patient's respiration? What do we have in our kit?
So we've got a chest seal, okay? Basically what this is called is an occlusive dressing. Lots of good ones out there. The one that the kit in every classroom provides is the hyphen vent chest seal, which is a great chest seal made by North American Rescue. And basically the way that works is if there is a hole, if there is an open wound somewhere in the chest cavity, and basically anywhere from the front, sides, or back. So if they've got a open wound, meaning basically an opening that goes into their chest cavity, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna seal up that wound using an occlusive dressing. So the respiration phase, basically what we're going to do is seal up any holes in the chest cavity, or what are called open wounds. Okay, basically the goal is to regulate the air pressure in the chest cavity and prevent unregulated air pressure from building up inside by entering that chest cavity through an open wound. How we do that is we're going to utilize the chest seal that comes in your kit. The one that comes in the kit is the hyphen vent chest seal made by North American Rescue. Great piece of kit. This is what we use at my agency, and we've had some really good success saving some lives with that piece of kit. So how we're going to do this is, let's say on Bob here, Bob is down and he's got a gunshot wound somewhere on his body. One thing that we can do is we can basically rake and try to locate where that hole is. Let's say that it's right here on his chest, on his right pec. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I can basically try to get that out of the way. However, if his clothing is stuck to the wound, I don't want to actually tear that out of the wound, all right? So let's say in this case it's not stuck, and I need to expose this so I have access. In your kit, you've got a nice pair of trauma shears. We can cut that away, cut that clothing away, get it all the way out of the way. All right, expose the wound. From there, I'm going to take my chest seal and I'm going to open it up. And inside, you're going to find that you've got a piece of gauze as well as the actual chest seal itself that is basically a very sticky piece of plastic covered by a hard piece of plastic. My gauze, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe away any excess blood that's at or about the wound. Okay, from there, if I can, seal it with my gloved hand. Very important, use gloves. Okay, seal it with a gloved hand or arm. I'm going to open that chest seal up. From there, I'm going to get it applied, and you'll notice on the chest seal itself, you've got this opening here with a vent, and a vent. Kind of looks like a peace sign. What I want to do is I want to leave this vent directly over the actual wound itself. So I'm going to apply the chest seal, centering that vent directly over the wound itself, and then seal it on all the way around. Now, if you've got a unconscious patient, you're going to want to wait for them to exhale all the way and then apply that at the bottom of their exhale. If I've got a conscious patient, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell them, all right, take a deep breath, blow out as hard as you can, and at the bottom of that exhale, that's when I'm going to seal that wound up.
So an important thing when we're putting these chest seals on, can you explain the importance of to roll the patient over and how we should do that?
Yes, absolutely. So when I apply this, this chest seal, I also need to be conscious of potential exit wounds or things like that. So anytime I'm doing my assessment, I want to make sure that that bullet or whatever has caused that defect didn't actually exit through the back of the body, so, or a different spot on the body. Keep in mind, bullets don't just laser through people. They enter and then they move around and they basically do what they want to do. So just because I have a bullet wound right here in the center in the chest does not mean it's going to be perfectly centered in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll that patient over and I'm going to rake looking for any exit wounds. All right? They may not be large, they may be very, very small. So when I do that, okay, basically when I'm doing my blood rake, I don't want to have my fingers apart. I want them together. And I'm going to create a rake with my gloved hand. I'm going to rake that patient looking for any defects that might be there. Easiest way for my guys to remember this, and it's kind of funny, paws not claws or purrs not gurs. All right, very easy to remember. All right, so as I'm checking, I'm looking for any defects that may be in that patient, and if I do find one, I'm going to take the other chest seal and I'm going to seal that up. If I don't have a secondary chest seal, what I'm going to do, options that I have, I can either use the packaging that any of this stuff came in, okay? And basically I'm gonna open that up, lay that over the top, and I'm gonna tape all 4 sides. Okay? I can also use this piece of plastic. Lay it over the top, tape all 4 sides.
So would you explain to us how far up and how far down we should be using chest seals and where that goes?
So basically what you want to be thinking is anywhere where a bullet could enter that chest cavity. So generally we want to be thinking navel to neck. All right, navel to neck is a pretty easy way to remember. If I have it slightly below the navel, think from the pelvis up. Okay, anywhere where I have basically a cavity for my guts.
Now, next on March is circulation. What can we do for our patient to help their circulation?
Okay, so in the circulation phase, it's important that we understand that we need to address all non-life-threatening bleeds in this phase. Okay, so if I've applied a tourniquet, let's say that Austin needed a tourniquet applied and I put one on his arm, and he's got a wound. Just because I applied that tourniquet in the massive hemorrhage portion of March doesn't mean that I'm done. In that circulation portion of the algorithm, what I'm going to do is I'm going to then dress that wound utilizing basically either my ETD that comes in my kit or the gauze or whatever. Basically, I'm going to wrap that up and and basically seal that up so foreign debris and stuff like that can't get into his actual wound.
All right, now we're on to H. What do we have in the kit that we can help for H, or hypothermia and possibly head injuries, and how can we help our patients and move from there?
So very important, if I have a head injury or I suspect a head injury, this is a major problem that needs immediate medical attention. So number 1, if you suspect a head injury, get them to medical as soon as possible. If you can load and go, great. If you can stabilize them until medical can get there, great. However, you need to understand that the head injuries are extremely dangerous and they need to be addressed by medical professionals as soon as possible. So, with that being said, if somebody has an injury on the head, nothing should go in and nothing should come out. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take our gauze and wrap that head up. If I've got an actual wound itself, I'm going to wrap that head up. I'm not going to put a ton of pressure on it. I'm just basically stabilizing that head so that nothing can come out and nothing can get in. Okay? As far as hypothermia, we need to understand that if a patient has lost a lot of blood, they've lost the ability to regulate their body temperature, which increases the likelihood of shock, which increases the likelihood of death. Alright, so what that means is we need to get them warm, and we need to get them with active warming, and we need to maintain that warmth. Okay? Doesn't matter if you or I who are uninjured are warm. The important thing is we need to keep them warm. So in your kit, you've got these little space blankets. These are great, but you need to actively warm that patient as well. So if you can turn up the heat, turn up the heat. If you have heat packs, put them in their groin area or their armpits and actively warm that blood that's circulating through their body, because if they've lost too much blood, they've lost the ability to basically produce heat, and we need to actively warm them up. The space blanket, when I wrap up somebody with a blanket, what I do is I lay it out, I put them on top of it, and then I wrap them up like a taco. What that allows them to do, or allows medics and everything to do, is open that up, work on their patient, assess their whatever they've applied, whether it's a tourniquet or whether it's a chest seal, whether it's gauze, wound packing, whatever it is, and then they can rewrap them. But it's very important that you understand active warming needs to occur as soon as possible. So turn up the heat. If you're in a vehicle, turn up the heat. I don't care if it's summertime, it doesn't matter. Turn up the heat, because even it could be 100 degrees out and your patient is going to be cold. All right, so warm them up as best you can and maintain their warmth by wrapping them up.
Okay, now that we're beyond March, what should we be doing once we've gotten all the way through March? Should we go back through again? Should we look for other people? What should we be doing?
So once I've gone through the March algorithm on my patient, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in a recovery position, okay? And if I've got one patient, I'm going to continually reassess. So if I've gone through March, cool, I'm gonna go through it again, and then again, and again as needed until paramedics take over or a doctor takes over. Okay, it's very important that you continually reassess your patient and reassure them that everything is gonna be okay. Okay, even if it's not, you need to be telling them that it is, because they could be on the edge of life or death, and believe it or not, your statements could push them one way or the other. So even if they're not okay, you're gonna tell them they're okay. All right, and that's a hard thing to do, but that's reality, okay? I'm just gonna continually reassess. If I can't stay with this patient for whatever reason, maybe I need to move on to another patient or another person, okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put them in that recovery position, and I'm gonna move on and help who I can when I can.
Okay, what are some things that we can get other people doing if we're the only trained person in this situation? What are some things that would be helpful to improve our situation?
So, obviously we want to get medical and law enforcement rolling as soon as possible. So, as soon as that situation has started, or as soon as practical, we're going to call 911. When we call 911, we're gonna provide them with basic information about our situation. They're going to ask you questions. Okay, some of them you're going to feel like are unnecessary, but they are necessary so they can get the appropriate information of first responders that are coming to your scene. Okay, but very important, you always need to know your location. If you're inside a building, say it's a school, you need to know your room number. Okay, very important. Your number of patients, who you are, basically what your situation is, and the status of your patient. So if I'm working on this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to age appropriate based on the people in the classroom that I'm with, or the people in my place of business that I'm with. I'm going to make assignments. Hey, you call 911. Tell them A, B, and C. Hey, you make sure the door is locked. You help me apply pressure to this wound. Basically, if I can divide the work, I can help ensure a better outcome.
Well, thank you for being on the Kit and Memory Classroom. So this is not sufficient training. You need to get further training. A great source of that is Harvey's company, Continuum of Force Concepts. There's a bunch of other great companies, North American Rescue, Sheepdog Response, or just a Stop the Bleed course from your local fire department.